Chiron going into Aries 18. We've had quite a journey since Chiron went into Aries. And remember that Jupiter also went into Aries and caught up with Chiron recently. The conjunction was a few weeks ago. And here we have Chiron in the 18th degree of Aries, the hammock image. And we have to just generally put this into the context of what's going on. And what's going on is that we're moving now. We've really moved into a new way of being and seeing the world. Our perspectives have changed so quickly, so dramatically and radically in the time that Chiron has been easing its way through Aries. And here we have all of the lessons that we have to learn in life slowly laid out to us, and we're beginning again to understand what it is we need to do differently. That's what Chiron's basically teaching us. Chiron is not only about exposing our wounds, it's also to do with learning how to heal them, knowing full well that that exposure is a precondition of the healing. So we have to take that into account when we think about Chiron's gift to us. The Aries 18 image is the empty hammock. All living things vibrate. They struggle and surrender. And these two things, struggle and surrender, are a clear message of life. Sometimes we push against, and sometimes we just allow for whatever reason. And we have to tune in to natural rhythms. And these two equal and opposing forces are studied here. The pure impulse and the conditioned response. That's what we're studying. So it's all about respecting natural rhythms. All life is rhythmic, and our personal long-term well-being and effectiveness depends upon our ability to find and practice whatever rhythm works for us. It is as inappropriate to be constantly active as it is to be constantly inactive or passive. Failure to understand this leads to a poor condition of life. Well, there's not much mystery in the idea that life is all rhythm. We learn that at a very early age. We breathe. We breathe in and we breathe out, and there's day and there's night, and there's rhythm everywhere. And here's the rhythm, active and passive, doing and being. When we look at that, we mostly find that people are out of rhythm. They don't quite do enough work, or they don't quite get enough rest, and they feel either lethargic and unable to get on with life and overcome challenges on the one hand, or on the other, stressed, basically. This fundamental secret in life is not much understood. It's not only that we have the need to rest, it's not only that we have to keep active or we lose our capacity for activity. Those are very simple wisdoms, but they're worth thinking about. If you feel lazy and you indulge that too often, then you lose the appetite for work. And if you do that, then you lose an involvement in life, which is a requirement. We have to work to get the full involvement of ourselves interacting with our environment. However, that can be taken to an extreme, and it can be taken beyond a balance point very easily, where we think that work is good and that resting isn't. And that's just silly. It's just on every level it's silly. But people do it. They work too hard for too long, and it just eats away at the soul in some way. However, it's not only about that, and I think Jones gets to a different point here. Aries 18, an empty hammock. This is a symbol of self-adequacy at its maximum potential for inner reorientation and outer readjustment, and of an utter absoluteness of non-compulsion on man as far as any essential conditioning or self-irrevocability is concerned. Now, these are not easy English words to understand. He wasn't a clear writer, I don't think, Jones. Let's just go through it. This is a symbol of self-adequacy. So, being enough, basically, and its maximum potential for inner reorientation. Just perceive yourself differently so that it works for your environment, your life. See yourself as appropriately placed in life. And outer readjustment. If you're not appropriately placed in life and you can't find that place, then you might need to change something in your circumstances. And of an utter absoluteness of non-compulsion on man, as far as any essential conditioning or self-irrevocability is concerned. So we're compelled by forces. This is not absolute, and this is not deterministic. This may well have shaped us into a certain personality and series of commitments in life, but it's not irrevocable. We can change anything. That's what he means here. Implicit in the symbol's staticism is the poise or balance of personal reality between the extremes of pure impulse and act, which in each man's given case would limit the individual and deny his conscious existence. We're conditioned not to follow our impulses, and part of us would work when we'd prefer to rest. Many of us do this. We're at work, it's not time to go home yet, and we continue to work when we don't want to. This is so much an accepted reality that it's not questioned. Well, Jones is questioning it. He's saying, it's just not true. It's just not true. You don't have to do what you don't want to do. The key word is rumination. When positive, the degree is a thoroughgoing integrity established by the inner reconciliation of outer inharmonies, and when negative, inability to comprehend the conflicts of life and a consistent effort to dodge them. So, rumination is introduced here, relying on the hammock not only to rest and recuperate and just find that kind of physical well-being and mental clarity again. We're doing something else. We're ruminating. Now this brings in the idea of the balance between experience and knowledge. These two are fundamentals in life. We are either incarnated into a physical body for the purpose of experience, or we leave the body and we go into the spirit realm in order to understand our recent experiences, and we gain knowledge then by rumination, basically. Now this isn't only life and death kind of cycles, in a body, not in a body, throughout eternity. That may well happen, but that's not the point here. The point is that we need to mirror that rhythm in our ordinary lives. So there has to be a time when we have experiences and we engage and we involve and we commit and we get into an intensity of life with other people in order to have the experiences that we wouldn't other get. And yet, if we don't ruminate on that, we don't consider what's going on in our lives, we've got to miss the point. The point is not simply to experience things, and especially not only good things. Most of our experiences of what we think of as bad things are actually much more helpful in the longer term. We learn so much more. So it's generally an image here with Chiron in the 18th degree of Aries of learning to gain a sense of meaning in your experiences. So, should I do this? So that's if. How do I do this? How? What have I gained from having done this? Why? We've got these different approaches to our life experiences. And the whole idea of understanding life, the meaning of life, myself, my environment, the nature of my species, all of these things, the meaning of that experience is soul development. It isn't for fun and pleasure and just to enjoy being. We can do that, but that's not the fundamental reason for our lives. That's not the meaning of life. The meaning of life is left without an explicit statement, so nobody really knows. It's always an opinion. And I think understanding that is actually the clue. Each of us makes up the meaning of life differently. We have a different meaning than someone else. And the idea that we should find the meaning of life as if there was just one, it's just not right. There's not just one meaning of life, unless that is to create for yourself the meaning of life. So this lovely little trick with words, the meaning of life is to find out the meaning of life for yourself. It's actually quite wise. And Chiron shifts us through various interpretations of situations. Like, for example, oh, I'm wounded. Oh dear, I'm hurt. And change that to, however, I can see this differently and be healed of my wound and gain something through that process. That's what Chiron is teaching us. And we have right now, in the next few days, Mars will be exactly squaring Chiron. And so you have the Chiron-Mars square to consider. Whenever we're considering Mars, we're talking about self-assertiveness, pushing yourself into the world, expressing who you are, and doing that sometimes when there's somebody who doesn't want you to be who you are. There's a conflict involved, and you assert yourself against somebody else's self-assertiveness. So you can imagine when Chiron and Mars are in aspect together, you're going to have some change of mind, some shift of perception, some experience of a wound associated with this idea turned into a healing by changing your mind. So this is quite helpful, and it's immediate. Over the next week, this is happening. Some aspect of our beings that wants to push forward, a Mars-like thrusting into the world, which is very healthy, totally necessary for a healthy being, especially a healthy adult in this case. We do want to thrust into the world. That's a part of who we are. And there's a very great deal of difficulty understanding this for some people, especially in alternative or New Age kind of circles. They don't really get masculine thrust as being a God-given aspect of wholeness. It seems to be naughty to thrust yourself forward or rude or something like that. It's just nonsense. Yeah, this is what went wrong with Lemuria, you read in books, that they denied their masculine energy. And they couldn't even bang a nail in the door because they conditioned their mind not to have that assertive energy. Ridiculous. And caused the downfall of their civilization, according to what we're able to read. And we must be aware of that. There's a thrusting within you, a real thrusting. You want it. Whether somebody else wants to give it to you or not is secondary. You're having it. That's Mars. And it needs to be a part of the palette of psychological tools that we have to cope with life. We do need Mars. And when Mars and Chiron are in aspect, we're going to study that question. We're going to study if we have Mars, how we express our Mars, why we express our Mars from the Chironic point of view in the hammock phase. Chiron's saying, just chill, cool it, take a rest, ruminate, contemplate your options. And Mars is saying, no, I want to thrust into the world. And they're at cross purposes because they're a square. So we're going to see the realization of a new understanding of what Mars is, by thrusting and finding that difficult in some way and ruminating on that difficulty. It is an oft-quoted thing that Einstein said, definition of insanity is trying to do the same thing again and again and expecting different results. Insanity. Well, it's not quite insane, it's just silly, isn't it? And we're all a little bit silly. We carry on doing the same things again and again and getting the same results and blaming someone else for what clearly is our fault. That's what we do. Now, in the case of Mars, you're going to be disappointed to some extent in your thrusting. You're going to come across opposition. You're going to come across obstacles and difficulties and blocks in your way for a little while. And the idea is not to push harder. It's actually to ruminate, to step back. Just think about what you're doing and change your mind about how to do it. I have many clients who just think that they can be free of all of their sins and failures just by being acquainted with them. It's not enough. You have to start with the acquaintance, learn about the meaning, and try something different. And that's what we're being asked to do here. We're asked to try something differently. Do something in a different way. Do a different thing. Don't necessarily do a knee-jerk anger kind of thing. That might not work. If it worked in the past, fine. If it didn't work in the past, well, don't do it again. Chiron square Mars. Chiron in the 18th degree of Aries. It's got a thrusting kind of image, isn't it? There's fire in the air, really. There's conflict to be dealt with. And let's deal with it. Let's find a better way forward.